Hi there, and welcome to this video on using AgilePoint and Generative AI to create complete business applications. Now, when I say a complete business application, we're going to see how Generative AI can use source documents, think about things like images or PDFs of a process model, and similarly, on the form side, to create a complete application. So let's get started by jumping into the builder. So to get started, I'd like to build a process-based application for today. And we'll give our application a name and drop it into a category. Similarly, we'll give our process model a name. And as you're seeing, the use case for today is going to be a product warranty claim application. Now for today's demo, we're going to leave this as the default as triggered by eForms, but everything that you'll see here in terms of event-based triggers might also apply. We're going to leave the swim lanes blank for now and let Generative AI make that decision. Okay, now next, AgilePoint is asking me if I'd like to create my process with AI. And of course we would. But what you're seeing here on screen is essentially a disclaimer. What AI will do using those source documents that we mentioned is essentially create a skeleton. Now, there will be some configuration remaining once Generative AI has completed its work, and also would give me the opportunity to make enhancements to the app. Think about things like additional integrations, rules, or perhaps look and feel. So here you're seeing the various ways in which I can use Generative AI to build the application. Now in past videos, you've seen this option here called Let AI Decide, where essentially I provide a prompt that informs the application that is ultimately built. And while that's great, there are a few drawbacks to this approach. Namely, there is likely that we have hallucination. And on the other hand, the application gets created may not necessarily reflect your organization's unique context. In other words, it might be generic. So it's important for AgilePoint to bring these other two approaches here, where we effectively ground the AI and tell it, this is precisely what I want, build this in AgilePoint. And as you're seeing here, I have a couple of options on screen. So for the process, I can use an image of the process model. Maybe this is an export from a legacy system, something that's been designed in Visio or Figma, or something I've downloaded from the internet. And similarly here with PDF. Now in our case, we're going to go with an image for today. And what I'll do next is simply upload this from my local machine. But as you're seeing here, I can always browse through connected repositories. Okay, so while Generative AI is processing the image that I've just uploaded, let's walk through it. So what you're seeing here on screen is a BPMN representation of a business process. BPMN is supported as of now, with additional standards coming in the near future. But what you're going to see over the course of this video is AgilePoint's Generative AI understanding each facet of this process map, starting with the basics, things like the number of swim lanes. From there, it will look to understand each and every distinct stage within this process. So as an example, here we're seeing we have a human task to submit a new warranty claim, as well as capture an approval. Beyond that, we have what appear to be a number of system activities or integration actions. So as an example here, we can check the warranty status, as well as update a number of systems and send notifications at different stages within the process. In addition to this, AgilePoint will also understand things like process logic. Okay, so with that being said, if we walk back into the builder here, we're met with a series of process steps based on Generative AI's understanding of my process map. Now, of course, from here, there's a couple of different options I can avail myself to. One, I have the ability to regenerate the result set, but beyond that, I can always make changes to the list of process steps that have been suggested. So looking at the results, we have the first form here being submit a new warranty claim, which flows into the check warranty activity. Now down below here, you're seeing that check warranty activity was suggested as a type of update process data. Now going back into our process map, if I had to guess, this is very likely an API call that validates warranty status. So this might be one instance where we go ahead and make changes to what's come back from Generative AI. So in that scenario here, we can go ahead and morph this into another activity. So what you're seeing here is effectively all of the different process actions you're already familiar with in the AgilePoint builder. The common stencil here showing things like process logic, email notifications, sub-processes, and so on. I have access to all of the human tasks that I would see in the builder. And of course, all of the connectors that AgilePoint supports out of the box. Now in this case here, I want to morph this from an update process data activity, and I'd like to select one of AgilePoint's generic protocol-based connectors for REST APIs. So what you've just seen here is that ability to refine and improve upon the results that have come back from generative AI. So in this case here, I have morphed it from one activity to another, but similarly, I can always add process steps or remove them if appropriate. Now you'll notice next to the submit activity that there's a gear icon. So this gives me an opportunity to further configure task participants and things like that. So I have less to do when generative AI has completed its work. So as you're seeing here, the basic configuration indicates 1 day to complete this activity. This of course can be changed. I can enable offline capabilities or add a timer for an escalation as an example. And further down below, I can also drag and drop in participants for this task. Again, this means that I have less to configure once the generative AI service has completed its work. And we can always leave that for later on. So I'm going to go ahead and close this out here for now. Scroll down towards the bottom. And as you're seeing here, similarly, I have the option to configure the condition. As you're seeing here on screen, I have the ability to change where the else connector is showing the incoming sequence, whether that's left or right, top or bottom, for instance, and can always make changes to the logic itself. For now, we can scroll down towards the bottom. Everything's looking pretty good. So as a next step, I'd like to shift gears from configuring the process to building out the interface for this application. Now, again, you're seeing a few different options here on screen. For today, we're going to create our form using AI, but you're seeing here another option to auto-generate the interface based on external data. This is going to be well covered in subsequent videos, so watch this space to see more on that topic. Okay, now when it comes to creating the form, you're seeing here I have a number of options with some overlap in terms of creating the process. I also have the ability to let AI decide, where I provide a prompt to build the form. But as we mentioned, it's really important to have grounding for AI and giving AI guidance in terms of what I want. So here you're seeing I have the option to attach an Excel sheet, an image, say a screenshot of a legacy system, or again, a mock-up that you've created in some design tool, or a PDF. Now in my case, I'm going to go with the PDF option, and following a very similar process, I'm simply going to upload this from my local machine. And alternatively, could have browsed through connected repositories. Now let's take a look at the interface for our product warranty claim here. So what you're going to see over the course of the next few minutes is, again, AgilePoint's generative AI understanding the details of this form and faithfully transposing this into the AgilePoint context. So what you'll notice is that AgilePoint will understand things like the form structure, where, as an example, we have a single row across the top for the request number. The middle section under customer information has a 3-column layout followed by 2 columns and then 1 column stretched all the way across. Taking it one step further, you're going to see that the generative AI service will also understand things like required fields. It will understand text box versus drop-down list, date field versus radio button, and say file attachment as an example. So we're going to see all of these things intelligently transposed into the AgilePoint context using all of the appropriate controls so that we can have great, high quality, validated data entering our warranty claim process. Okay, so we move back into the builder. Again, we're met with the opportunity to make enhancements or revisions to the list of form fields and data entity columns that you're seeing here on screen. Now, the generative AI service has done a really great job of understanding things like the request number. We understand this needs to be a sequence number so that each time this application runs, a unique ID is generated. Now, things like first name and last name being suggested as type of text box works well. And scrolling further, we're going to see things like phone and email have their corresponding AgilePoint form controls. Things like the street address was intelligently suggested as a text area, which is going to give me more real estate as opposed to a traditional text box. Now, again, there are items that we'll have to configure, as evident by the gear icon. So things like state has been correctly suggested as a type of pick list and drop-down list. But again, let's go ahead and configure this. Now, as far as generating values for my pick list is concerned, I have the option to select an existing pick list if applicable, or I can have fresh values generated by Generative AI. So we'll have some fresh values generated here. We'll have a list of all of the US states created automatically. Okay, so our list has been generated. I'm just going to give this a descriptive name. Okay, so our state drop-down list has just been configured. Now, one row further down, you're seeing here that zip code has been suggested as a type of text box. So in this case here, we do have another control that might be a better fit. So I'm going to go ahead and reclassify this to a type of postal code. Now, just like you'd seen previously, I do have the ability to both regenerate as well as add new columns to my data entity or fields to my form, but so far that's not required. Okay, so type of damage. Here's another area where we need to configure our drop-down values. So again, here I'm going to have Generative AI give us values for our drop-down list. Okay, so for type of warranty and purchase source, if we go back to our form, you're going to see here that we already have values for our radio buttons. So what you'll notice is that AgilePoint's Generative AI will go out to the form, grab those values, and pre-create the pick list on our behalf. Okay, you're seeing that here, pre-created. And the same thing here with the purchase source. And lastly, we can show the line breaks. Okay, so our form is now looking pretty good, and recall that we mentioned behind the scenes an AgilePoint data entity will also be created with the exact same column structure. And also bear in mind that this would also support a master detail sort of relationship. Okay, so as a next step, we're going to configure our primary entity here. So AgilePoint has correctly identified that the request number is the best candidate for our primary key, though I do have the option to reclassify that as needed. And then as a final step, which process steps or which human tasks within my application should inherit the UI that we've just designed. So I'm going to go ahead and leave that as it is. Okay, so for those of you who have been with AgilePoint for some time, you're probably familiar with this screen where I can add things like access tokens, repositories for file attachments, style sheets, JavaScript, and what have you. For now, I'm going to go ahead and skip through this. And we'll go with the default application security. Okay, so finally, I've been dropped into the application designer, and as you can see here, the skeleton of my application has been configured. We have our human tasks, our system activities, as well as process logic. You'll notice in looking at the process model that a number of these activities will have exclamation points, which indicates there are some items yet to configure. So that would be things like task participants, the API calls, as well as the system updates and email notifications. But let's take a look at the form to ensure that things like our drop-down lists, required fields, and of course the layout have been brought over appropriately. So here you're seeing our form. Let's go ahead and bring this up in preview. So for one, the layout of our form is precisely as our source document prescribed. We have things like our display names and required fields, and of course the drop-down lists are now fully populated. So with that being said, in closing this video, what you've just seen is how grounded generative AI can build applications precisely as we want them to be in the AgilePoint context. And of course, gives us a huge head start by building out or automating the assembly of some of the low-level application development tasks. So with that, that's going to conclude the content for this video. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you soon.